Thank you. Hello and happy Friday to everybody joining us. Welcome to Camelback's Founder Fridays Live, the series where we sit down with Camelback fam entrepreneurs who are driving revolution in the education and conscious tech spaces. Super excited to get into this conversation today. Quick intros. My name is Lex Lindsay. I am the Senior Associate of Marketing and Communications at Camelback Ventures and your host today. And I'm hyped to have with me today Wa'il Ashshowwaf from REYETS. Wow. What's up, man?
Yeah, excited to be here. Always love connecting with Camelback and, spending some time talking about REYETS.
Yes, yes. Well, let's go ahead and jump right into this conversation.
Let's do it.
Familiar? What is REYETS?
REYETS is a social justice mobile app and platform that basically helps people know their rights, how to safely assert them, and it gives them tools to connect with organizations and alternatives to 911. It's like a civil rights movement in your pocket.
Yes, right on, man. We love it. We love it. So excited to talk more about what REYETS is doing, how you guys are bringing social justice and trying to end police brutality, police violence in these streets. So really, really excited to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Before we hop fully into the conversation, I always like to ground our Founder Fridays, with this one question, which is, what are you ruthless for good for?
Well, you cut out for a second. What am I ruthless for?
Ruthless for good for, yes.
Yeah, I'm ruthless for good for empowering people and ending injustice so that people can use justice to support their lives instead of spending their lives trying to get justice.
Yes.
So that's what I'm ruthless for.
Right on, man. We love it. Cool, cool. Well, so I want to go back to the very, very beginning of your journey. I know you're kind of like a serial entrepreneur in the conversations that we had. So what propelled you into the entrepreneurial space and eventually led to you founding REYETS?
Yeah, I think, I was just born loving technology. And mind you, I was born in the mid-'70s, so there wasn't I think Atari came out the year I was born, right? But I'd always really been into technology and fascinated with entrepreneurship. And I actually had my first startup in the mid-'90s. And it was similar to an Amazon, but they were selling books when they came out. I was selling computers online.
Nice.
And what's crazy is when I created that startup, I actually built it using the university servers because it wasn't easy to have your own server. And I almost got kicked out of school because they said, oh, you're using the school server. And back then it was like a big deal. And I tell my friend, and he says, oh, you know what? I have some friends in Stanford. They're also using their school servers. They're building this search engine called Google. You should meet them. And then he showed me the Google, a very early Google website. It wasn't even public then. And I was like, this looks stupid. No. Little did I know. I never met them, never followed up. But I regret it. But going back to your question, I've always had this just inner drive to use technology to create good, to make life easier, to create things and do it as an entrepreneur. And ever since that moment in 1995, I kept building, failing, and trying again for decades after.
Oh man, that's awesome. I love to hear, I don't think we talk enough about entrepreneurs who the failures that happen before you really land on something that is successful and see success. So I think that that's so cool that you name that. There were ventures that came before REYETS and they weren't successful, but you kept going, you kept persevering until you came to REYETS. Can you speak a little bit? You and I have talked, and I've heard a little bit about your story of how you started REYETS, but could you speak more to how did you come up with the idea for REYETS and eventually build it out?
Yeah. So actually, the first semester on campus, I was actually originally in New York when I was a freshman, and so I think it was the second week on campus, I got arrested. Someone I never knew, never met, accused me of assaulting them. But I remember at the time just thinking in my head, oh, well, the justice system is going to protect my innocence and I'll figure it out. Although I had no resources, I didn't know my rights. And people that witnessed what happened to me had no idea how to help me. And slowly it became evident that things are not going well. The system isn't there to protect my rights. if I don't know how to protect them. So long story short, it didn't end well for me. I ended up getting kicked out of school, having to go to court, and it was a lot of headache, heartache, and pain.
Mm-hmm.
But that planted the seed where we didn't have cell phones at the time, but I was like, it shouldn't be this way, right? And then forward 25 plus years later with all these videos, and I think it was the video of Philando Castile that I remember having the actual moment where I was like, okay, I'm just going to dedicate my time and energy to finding a solution using what I know, which was technology, business, innovation, design, to solving this problem. And I want to try to do it in a way that's different, because I recognize that, you know, there's a legacy of like great not-for-profits like ACLU and the ACP that have been fighting this for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought if I could find a different way to attract it or, you know, attack the problem, I might find a different solution that works.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. I mean, just the innovative spirit has always been there, it sounds like.
Yeah. I think it's just something that's like, I don't know if I must have got it from my ancestors, but I've always loved to create.
That's awesome, man. Thank you for sharing that story with us. So be it with REYETS, I know that you have another venture that's kind of another venture in addition to REYETS, and then those that came before you. Could you share some of the challenges that you faced as an entrepreneur, specifically as an entrepreneur of color, and how you've overcome those challenges?
Yeah, so when I first wanted to really jump into entrepreneurship, like traditional like tech entrepreneurship, the barriers were like very obvious. One, if you didn't speak the language, you weren't around the community of like people that were already founders and tech founders and investors, then you were out of the circle. And whether by design or just by sheer, you know, virtue of where the money is, that circle was mostly middle-aged white men, mm-hmm. right? So I was like, okay, how do I then create this for myself? I'm like, fine, I'm going to create my own startup studio and figure out and learn the system and become part of the system so I can create my own change and fund people that can't get funded. So I ended up creating something called Unstuck Labs, which was a startup studio, and no one knew who we were. So what I did was for 2 years, every Tuesday we hosted a meetup. 2 to 3 hours, open house. We did about 100 meetups over 2 years where people would just come in and we would just help them whatever they were stuck with. Like, I need help building an app. I can't ideate. I don't know where to get funding. Mm-hmm. And through that process, we ended up getting a lot of access to resources and networks and things like that. So we were able to overcome that.
Man, that's awesome.
It wasn't easy though.
Yeah. Well, like literally building the change that you want to see in the world. You recognize like, hey, there is essentially like closed doors here, but there's opportunities that need to be open. Those doors need to be open for others. And so rather than trying to go maybe beat down this door or, you know, like bang your head against the door trying to get in, I'm just going to create a new room. And, you know, make this opportunity available to others who are, you know, maybe in the same situation as I am. So that's dope, man.
I think there's a mindset, especially if you're a first-time founder, it's hard to have that mindset, but it's understanding you don't know what's possible. So there's lots of things that we think are impossible and we limit ourselves because of our belief. We block our own success, right? Yeah. So you have to put yourself out there, even if you believe something is impossible. If you have a goal, you have to believe that you can achieve it, and then just take this, keep going.
Right on. I mean, you're already kind of offering pieces of advice, but if you could offer like 1 to 2 pieces of advice for founders, specifically those wanting to start a tech venture, what would those 2 pieces of advice be?
Yeah. So if you're trying to build a tech venture or impact venture, it's your first venture, the 2 most common things I get people are stuck with is like, I can't find a good idea, and then what do I do next? So my 2 pieces of advice is, 1, you can just literally grab a piece of paper, write on it me, and write all the ideas that you're facing personally. Then draw another circle around that and put family, put all the ideas that your family are facing, like challenges, problems. Then put community, then do city, country, global. By the end of it, you're going to have a list of all these problems. Then just find the ones that are interesting for you, that matter for you. And those are the first set of problems that you should start like thinking about creating a startup around. And then your job after that is talk to as many people as possible. So for every idea, you want to have like 30, 40 conversations with people to understand like how are they facing their problem. And then you're going to have like a list of like things that you can actually work on. And it'll help you go from like, I want to do it, but I don't know where to start. And like being in that cycle for a long time to like being able to have like an actionable plan that you could start like right after this Instagram, like you can just go start it now.
Yeah, man. Literally over here giving a masterclass to get started. I'm gonna grab my piece of paper and start identifying all these problems and hopefully have a startup by the end of this week. Well, I guess
I know.
Party at the end before the weekend ends. No, that's awesome. Yeah. Is that kind of the framework that you use to develop the ventures that you've come up with? Is just like writing down the problems that have been facing the communities that you're in?
Yeah, so it's all like, I always tell founders, I don't care about the idea. The idea in the beginning is the least important. There's only two things I care about: you as a founder, and then the problem that you're solving. Mm-hmm. So that's what process we use for like identifying the problem. And then for you as a founder, we teach something called the ikigai, which is a Japanese concept meaning finding your purpose.
Yes.
And there's a whole like methodology behind doing that. But the idea is you take your ikigai, your perfect purpose, and you match it with the problem you're solving. And then you can validate, like, is that a good problem to solve? Is it like desirable, feasible, viable?
Yeah.
And it's off to the races, and expect like, to fail a lot. And then the second part, when it comes to like getting capital or money, you have to get used to no, which is really uncomfortable for everyone. It's human nature. But here's how to reframe it. Instead of making your goal to raise money the first time you're fundraising, make it your goal to see how fast you can get your first 100 no's. Just say, I want to get 100 no's. Can I get 100 people to say no to me? That should be your goal. And keep calling, sending emails. Once you have your 100 no's, you're going to earn your right to have the yes. Right?
Yeah, that's such an interesting, I love that reframe, because it really just gets you to normalize or to internalize, like, no, like, let me get these first 100 no's. Let me get that uncomfortable feeling out of the way. Let me get used to hearing. That way, when the yes comes, it's a breakthrough at that point, but like, let me get used to hearing no. Let me get comfortable with it. And it kind of takes the pressure off of you a bit. Like, no, I'm going to hear no. Let me just embrace this right now.
It gives you permission to like get a no. And then like, I literally have a spreadsheet. When I get a no, I always ask, what would make us more investable? What would you need to see? And the second question is, what challenges do you think a startup like ours will face in the industry? And I just write those down, and then I look for patterns. So if 30 people say like, oh, your business model needs work, then I'm like, okay, there's something there. Versus if just one person says it, like and then I use that for the next round of fundraising.
Yeah. No, that's dope too. Being able to take, not just take the no, but also get some feedback and like, are there recurring themes here so that you can, improve and optimize on your end so that, maybe the next answer is a yes.
Yeah. You will eventually get to a yes or find the idea that will.
Yeah. That's awesome, man. So I want to jump into kind of like the impact that REYETS has had. Your purpose, your mission is to, end police brutality, to help folks know their rights and assert their rights. Can you share, or do you have an example or a story of when you've seen the impact of REYETS and witnessed it firsthand?
Yeah, so I get a lot of like emails or messages about people that have used it like on the spot. Either like, hey, I was just pulled over and they tried to search my car and I found out, I didn't have to consent. So we get a lot of those stories. There's one example that I could share that happened actually to our co-founder, Justin Moore. He went to visit his client, Larry Hoover, and they wouldn't let him in the jail. They physically wouldn't give him access to his client. And so then they ended up actually locking the front door of the building. When he stepped out to go on Instagram, he was sharing what was happening. So then through our platform, we then pinged our community and we showed everyone the phone number for the front desk. And we said, call them and tell them that it's a public building, federal building, they should let him in. And because so many people were like active and on there, one, it created transparency.
Yes.
Two, it actually forced them to open the building and address the issue. And it all happened, it was happening live. So that's a way of like how community can like, you know, digital activism in practice.
Oh my God.
So
that's wild. Oh my, like instant too. I mean, that's kind of like the beauty, I guess. Yeah, really the beauty of technology is like how far it's advanced. At this point, you're seeing like instantaneous transformation, instantaneous change. And it's just available right here. It's in our hands. It's sitting in our hands. The ability to create change is sitting in our hands. That's crazy.
Like the big beauty of digital activism. And there's lots of people that are skeptical about digital activism, is understanding the viral potential of mobile technology.
Yeah.
And the network effect it has if you do it right and you can get it working right.
Oh man, that's wild. Thank you for sharing that story. That's awesome. So as a social innovator, or what we like to talk about, part of what we talk about at Camelback is just building livable communities, building generational inheritance, you know, change and impact that lasts not just for us in our generation, but it lasts, you know, 7 generations down the line, tens of generations down the line. And so I'm curious, as a social innovator, what legacy are you hoping to leave behind, you know, through, be it through REYETS, be it through Unstuck Labs, or just, you know, your general entrepreneurship endeavors overall?
Yeah, so the one word that comes to like my mind is unlocking potential. And I was really thinking about this a lot, like through the lens of justice. So if you think about a person who's, say you're 14, 15, you have your whole life ahead of you, and there's endless possibilities, literally, right? But time is finite. So the more injustice there is in the world, in your community, in your city, in the block that you live in, the more of that time you have to utilize to either restrict yourself because you're in fear of physical harm or injustice, or because you're always fighting it. It's consuming and taking up your time. And this is kind of like an injustice tax that BIPOC and colored people pay that's invisible. Now,
Yeah.
that same time that I'm using for combating injustice is time I can be using developing myself, growing, having fun, exploring, building a business, building a network, right? So just that one change, I think, can have such a profound impact that, you know, going back to your question, that would be like a legacy, like I would be proud of to leave, where people are not worried about that anymore, right? They can focus, like, it's just in the background, it's happening, and they can worry more about what they want to be, or at least that we're on an equal playing field, where some people, like now, don't worry about that at all. And some people, they're consumed by it.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh my gosh. That is honestly probably one of the more beautiful legacies I've heard. That was really inspiring, man. It makes me think about just like, you know, operating in our zones of genius. And you're right, there are so many of us, specifically within undervalued communities, that are consumed by just making sure that we can make it home, you know, when we step out the door, that we're going to make our families, and to be able to imagine a world where one that isn't a concern, like we're all able to literally walk out the door and we're not worried about whether we're going to make it home to our kids, to our families, and just to see that there are people like you, entrepreneurs like you, who are thinking about that legacy, thinking about that impact, for all of us is awesome. I love it. We gotta put that down on a poster and Just some words to live by right there. Cool. Well, thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing that legacy. And we're
No,
super
thank
excited to fill it.
My pleasure.
Uh, yeah. So as we think about what's been happening, or I'm curious, what have you been working on this year? What's up next for REYETS and Unstuck Labs? Like, what are you working on? And what, even beyond 2022, we're already halfway through the year. What's on REYETS' plate?
Yeah, so it's been a great journey so far with REYETS. You know, we've grown our community. We have, you know, close to 15, 20,000 people on our platform now and growing every day. And we've learned along the way. And one key thing we learned, so we started off, when we first started off, we were a cop watch app. It was like, here's the app, you can go create transparency, watch cops. Then we added REYETS, and then we added community and reporting and everything else that we have today. And we became like, oh, here's justice tools. These are tools for justice. So now the next iteration or evolution of that is we realize is having the tools is great, but you need to find a way to draw people in to really educate themselves. So we're moving away from being what I called before, like we're the WebMD of civil rights, to more like the Duolingo of civil rights. We're now, imagine like something happened in the news, and Lex, you get pinged, and you're like, there was recently a school shooting. Do you want to learn about Second Amendment rights in your city? And you're like, yes. And you take this micro learning module. And then it's going to ping the people in your network and say, hey, Riaz, hey, Salam, Lex just finished this module. Do you want to join her? And then you all finish it. And then it's now telling you, hey, by the way, in Colorado, New Orleans, there's these community organizations that are addressing this issue. Do you want to follow them within the app? And then you're clicking this. And then now they know you followed them, and they can invite you, give you access to like what they're working on. So it's drawing you in to actually educate and be interactive, but in a way that's not a burden to you and doesn't feel difficult. And it's just like you can do this while you're in an Uber or on the metro, you know?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, this is so exciting. Just like that roadmap that you drew out. Oh my gosh. And I mean, it is the social justice network, but it's like bringing in more community, and being able to get us all involved what are the words? Get us all involved in all, I guess,
Like being
community.
advocates.
Yeah, all of us becoming advocates together and learning together. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Right?
it's you know, it's making justice accessible to people that are not like already in the advocacy world. It can be intimidating. Like
Yeah.
they see protests, they see marches, they're like, I have to go find this organization. So making that super accessible and at any level, I think would allow us to really have a lot of people engaged that normally would not be engaged.
Yeah. No, that's really exciting, man. Do you kind of have like if you're able to share, I guess, a bit of a timeline of what you think that you guys will be building that out? Is that something you're actively working on? Beginning stages, middle stages?
Yeah, so we're actively working on it. Ideally, we'd like to release it by the end of the year, but here's the clincher. We need the fundraising to actually make it happen. So we have a WeFunder going on. If you go to wefunder.com/rights, support us, but we're looking for grants, sponsors, and other organizations to actually get the funding to really see this through. So it's going to be dependent on that. Fingers crossed, it all works out, and by Christmas or New Year's, this is rolled out at least in beta to our users.
Oh, right on, right on. So could you drop that link one more time for folks who are tuning in? If you guys are able to give our connected system members, grant makers, help our man Wa'il out, man. I want to see this come to fruition.
I dropped it in the chat as well, but it's wefunder.com/rights, or if
Awesome.
you go to rights, REYETS.com, a pop-up will come up and it'll say like, hey, we want you to be part of our journey, invest in REYETS.
Yes, awesome. Thank you for sharing that again. We're looking forward to seeing you bring that to life.
Thank you, thank you.
So if you don't know, y'all, Wa'il is a 2022 Camelback alum. He recently finished the fellowship up. What was it, in May? So it's been a couple
Yeah,
of, but just fresh into the Camelback fam.
fresh out the box.
And we're preparing to open up our Camelback Fellowship application for 2023. And so for those who are tuning in, maybe you're an entrepreneur or a founder and you're looking for an accelerator to, take your venture to the next level. I want to ask you, Wa'il, if you could share how the Camelback Fellowship has impacted you as an entrepreneur, as a founder, and how it's impacted REYETS as a venture.
Yeah, so I thought a lot about this question as well. And there's the generic answer. Yes, every accelerator you're going to get like capital and all the good stuff that comes with accelerator. But there's also things that a Camelback Fellowship offers that I think makes it special. And I'll talk about three things. One is this idea of the first follower. So if you think about like ventures that are coming, often us as entrepreneurs, we have to be leaders. We kind of have to be a bit crazy to want to do this in the first place. And although we might think we're important, what's really more important is finding that first follower. Not before you have the money, before you have the success, who's that first follower that really believes in you as a person and believes in your venture, that it's something that's actually going to create change and generational wealth and all the good things. And that's what I found through Camelback, that first follower. And that first follower gave me credibility, gave me confidence, right? And it did something really important. It showed all the other ventures, accelerators, organization, how to follow me, right? It creates kind of that FOMO and that halo effect.
Yeah.
So that's something that Camelback, I feel like they're very ruthless or courageous in taking bets. There might be bets that others might not take. The second is getting a blueprint. So often when you're building like an impact venture, it's often a new space because it's traditionally been like either like maybe just charities or not-for-profits, but you're doing something different. And then what I found is I wasn't the only one trying to do this. Now I'm part of a community of people doing it. And people have been doing it in different ways. So I get to see all these different blueprints on how people have been building. And it's really accelerated, like from where I started to where I ended, like how I thought of evolving, even this idea of being like a Duolingo from REYETS, right? And then that feeds into the third thing I want to talk about, which is finding your tribe, right? And I think finding your tribe is even more difficult yet important than finding your community. If I think of a community as wide, your tribe are the people like I can pick up the phone and call anytime. I can send a text message to without preface, without formalities, right? And I think just through the experience, now I have, I know 30, 40 people that I can just rely on to offer me help, right? You're part of a tribe. So first follower, getting the blueprint for your business, and finding your tribe are three things you get at Camelback that I think are very unique. And, my hat's off to you and the whole Camelback team for making that happen.
Right on. Wow. Thank you so much for sharing those takeaways from the fellowship. We really appreciate and love that we're honored to have you as a part of the Camelback fam for sure.
It's mutual.
Support the incredible work that you're doing. This last question is more of a fun one, just to, get a good smile or chuckle in. And a little bit of insight into you as a person. If you could meet any influential person, past or present, who would it be and why?
So I want to be a bit selfish in how I answer this question. And that to me, I'm going to consider who's been influential to me. And so my grandfather passed away when I was still in my early adolescence. But he's someone who had a great impact on me because he demonstrated extreme kindness, and not only extreme kindness, it's the first time I learned about giving people grace and the benefit of the doubt. He exemplified for me. It's something that really instilled this character in me about being patient with people, being empathetic. So I would love to spend more time as an adult understanding even why he got that, where he got that from. And, you know, they say if you don't know where you come from, you don't know where you're going. So I would love to speak to him.
Oh man, that's awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, we back a little back to the generational inheritance. It sounds like that is something that you inherited from him, and it would be amazing to hear some more of that story of where he got it from, who he inherited it from. That's beautiful, man. Cool.
Thank you.
Well, wow, we really appreciate you. I really appreciate you joining us today and sharing a bit about your story, a bit about REYETS, your incredible advice for entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs on how to get started, where they can find ideas, and just, you know, give the advice to not give up, you know, to continue to persevere. How can people connect with you to learn more about REYETS, to learn more about Unstuck Labs? Where can
I'm super accessible. So if you DM me on social media, you'll find me. LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn. And you can just email hello@reyets, REYETS.com. Find me there as well. So my name is spelled in a really unique way. So as long as you know how to spell my last name, you'll find me everywhere. But email and just hit me up, either direct message me on social media, and you can connect with me very easily.
Awesome. And we also want to encourage folks to go into the App Store and download REYETS, right? It's REYES.
Yes, so it's a combination of the word rights, like your civil rights, and I, like eyewitness, jammed together.
Right. Yeah,
So
so
yes,
y'all.
please download the app. And you can actually, thank you, Lindsay, for reminding me. Actually, probably a better way is once you download the app, you can click community and then find my profile and follow me in the app. And then you can direct message me there as well. And that I'll probably be able to respond much quicker on there.
Awesome. Right on. I'm glad that we raised that. Cool. Well, Wa'il, thanks again so much, man. We appreciate you, as always, for being a part of the Camelback fam, for being so gracious and willing to share your wealth of knowledge as an entrepreneur. Those of you who are tuning in, thank you so much for joining us today. If you are an entrepreneur or a founder leading a venture that is education or in conscious technology, our application for the 2023 Camelback Fellowship is going to be opening on August 7th. So keep an eye out. We're going to be posting updates on our social media channels. We'll let you know when the application is open, but just keep an eye out. That application is coming, and we want to see your app. We want to see you come through and get to know more about you and your venture. While yes,
I was gonna say, apply. I applied. My application went in 5 minutes before the deadline. So you never know. And if you have questions about applying, you can DM me and I'll give you my experience or advice as well.
Awesome. Yes, thank you. Thank you again for being willing to share that. Everybody, thank you guys so much for joining us today. We host these Founder Fridays live every second and fourth Friday of the month. So keep an eye out for our next conversation coming in August. Until then, we'll see you next time.
Till next time. Peace. Thank you.